85% of brain development occurs before the age of 6. So that means that if you are not catching children at that age, if you don't introduce that stimulation early, it's a critical window that then passes, and there are learning losses that cannot be made up for later in life. We spend a massive amount of money on our children before they enter the school age system. In the early childhood sector, we talk about the inappropriate downward extension of pedagogy, primary pedagogy. If you force a child into rote learning, into sitting in neat little rows, into reading and writing too early, what happens is you're taking them away from play, you are separating them from the joy of learning, and instead turning learning into a chore. You're associating learning with negative emotions for that child, and therefore they are unable to develop, this what we call joyful and play-based learning. What early childhood teaches us is that we must make learning joyful. When pedagogy is play-based, then children, they develop positive dispositions towards learning. Ministry of Women and Child Development recently launched a curriculum for children 3 to 6 that is to be implemented at the Anganwadi centers. And this is called Adharshila. The National Education Policy 2020 is the first time that pre-primary education has been brought under the continuum of school learning at a policy level. As we know, the National Curriculum Framework for Foundation Stage was also released, which sees age 3 to 8 as one learning continuum. Right now, why is this so critical? One of the things that we like to say at one of the stats that is one of our key headliners always at Rocket Learning, which is an organization that is working in 10 states with over 2 million children around the country, is a stat that has been quoted in NEP, which is basically that 85% of brain development occurs before the age of 6. So that means that if you are not catching children at that age and you are not providing them with the adequate stimulation in the form of play-based activities and games that are essentially learning, if you don't introduce that stimulation early, it's a critical window that then passes, and there are learning losses that cannot be made up for later in life. Right? As a country, and I'm sure, many of us, our parents will know this, we spend a massive amount of money on our children before they enter the school age system. And then actually after school, it kind of reduces a little bit because it ends up being purely tuition based or certain extracurricular activities. But before the age of 6, the investment that we as households make in our children is very high. But at the national level, this is actually reversed. There is a much higher expenditure that is happening at the primary level than there is at pre-primary. And so what does the pre-primary segment, what does that sector really have to tell us about stress and burnout, right? Thankfully, we don't really see stress and burnout as such in children before they enter the age of school going grade 1, right? But the reason and the connection that I really want to make here that I think is really so fundamental is that in the early childhood sector, we talk about the inappropriate downward extension of pedagogy, primary pedagogy. What does that mean? That means that in primary school, many of the challenges that you've just pointed out right now, and that as educators, many people are aware of, are things like focus on rote learning, over stress. So the R.K. Lakshman example that you took of the school bag, right? Overburdening students. That form of pedagogy, if it was downward extended, if it was extended downwards into pre-primary, is developmentally much more inappropriate, right? Because at that age, what is happening is the child is developing character and the child is developing a disposition for learning. And so the term for this phenomena that is so critical to avoid at the early childhood stage is called the damaged disposition hypothesis, right? Many of us will be familiar with this. Basically, it says that if you force a child into rote learning, into sitting in neat little rows, into reading and writing too early, what happens is you're taking them away from play, you are separating them from the joy of learning, and instead turning learning into a chore. You're associating learning with negative emotions for that child, and therefore they are unable to develop, what we call joyful and play-based learning. And so my submission here is that there is a very strong connection, there's a very strong lesson that early childhood pedagogy has to offer the rest of the K-12 system and upwards, in fact, right? This doesn't just stop at school, but continues up to university and, in fact, adult learning, which is that aiming to avoid stress is like a negative, it's a goal of absence, right? It's a goal of omission. We are trying to avoid stress, avoid burnout. Instead, what early childhood teaches us is that we must make learning joyful. Pedagogy must be play based, right? So because when pedagogy is play based, then children, they develop positive dispositions towards learning, they develop curiosity, they develop creativity, they learn persistence, they look forward to going to school, to in the early childhood space, to the Anganwadi center, meeting their friends and like engaging in these new and curious ways of learning. And play is something that is not actually even limited to human beings or mammals, right? Like all animals in the natural world play as well, because play is a form of learning. There are studies that show that sometimes monkeys will give up food and material resources just for the promise of new information, because we are biologically hardwired to accept
Sanjana,
and
your
seek
video
out.
is not clear. Sanjana, your video is not clear. It's blurred. Can you do something there?
I'm not sure that I'll be able to fix that.
Okay, fine. I just
Um,
wanted to tell you because your sound is clear, only the video
okay.
is spoiled. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm not using slides or anything, so it's fine as long as you can hear my voice. I think that is enough. And so I wanted to just again, reiterate that it is really play that we are talking about. It is play as learning, right? So the Ministry of Women and Child Rocket Learning works very closely with the Ministry of Women and Child Development and a number of stakeholders at the national level in the government. And the Ministry of Women and Child Development recently launched a curriculum for children 3 to 6 that is to be implemented at the Anganwadi centers. And this is called Adharshila. Now, in Adharshila, you will find that the importance of different types of play has been given, a absolute pride of place. The types of play that we talk about are things like free play, which is completely child initiated, completely self directed. It means leaving the child to play as they want entirely. Then you come to guided play, which is child led, but there is active adult facilitation. That means an educator, Anganwadi worker, parent, teacher is sitting there and or sitting, standing, playing, kneeling, facilitating these activities, guided play with the child. And then the third is the form of structured play or directed play. And all these forms of play, when they are combined, right, together, when you provide children with a variety, you provide them with structured, unstructured, indoor, outdoor, group, individual, pair-based, and all of these different forms. I wanted to bring out these few elements of what play really indicates, right? Choice, wonder, and delight. And then just to wrap up, how does this apply in later years as well? So activity based, project based learning is associated with higher information retention. If you're enjoying the learning, you're actually learning better. It's also associated with better skill development, right? So you're not just focusing on, say, audio, visual, or reading and writing, but you're also focusing on the kinesthetic, on the tactile. And so, three key messages, right? Which is encourage play early, before the age of 6, encourage it early, let play continue, right? Let play continue for school age children K through 12, so that children develop their own interests and are able to, approach learning with joy and critical thinking as well. And the third is to incorporate play in adulthood, right? Stress and burnout are not limited to students. It's something that we all risk every day in our lives. So play in any form, whether it is drawing, painting, music, pets, playing with children, it's a source of creativity, inspiration, and joy. And that is that is the lesson that early childhood has to offer for avoiding stress and burnout, um, not only through the school system but also for all of us through life. Thank you.